everybody. Welcome to Learning the Scottish Great Highland Bagpipe with me, J.D. Ingram, pipe major of the Charleston Pipe Band. This week we're going to be learning
Lesson 7, Doublings. Your goal in this lesson is to be able to play doublings cleanly and rhythmically on any note. Focus on the idea of using embellishments in music. Try some of the tunes that are introduced. Your homework is to do doubling warm-up exercises. Your resources are Beginning the Bagpipes by Sandy Jones, page 24 to 25, also page 28 and page 30 to 31, or The College of Piping Tutor, part 1, pages 38 and 39, also 41 to 43, and page 53. So back in lesson 6, we talked about the GDE grace note pattern and how frequently it occurs in bagpipe music. Sometimes you'll also just have the G and the D or the G and the E grace notes, but because multiple grace notes were occurring in the same order so frequently, a shorthand was developed of a system we call embellishments. And the first type of embellishment we're going to learn is doublings. The first type of doublings we're going to talk about are the low doublings. These are for the low notes, low G, low A, B, and C. How you play one of these is first you play a G grace note on that note, and then you play a D grace note on that note. When you look at them written out, that theme note will be written as a third grace note in the middle of your G grace note and your D grace note, but you should really think about it as just a quick real note, not a grace note. You can see this at the bottom of the slide, where on the right hand side I've written it out as if it's a G grace note to a quick real note and then a D grace note to a longer real note.
Alright, let's try out the low doublings now. The low doublings are a G grace note and then a D grace note on any note of these, low G, low A, B, and C. So we'll try it on low G first. I'll just play a low G and then a doubling back to low G. Same thing with A. And with B. And with C. What I'm listening for here is crisp grace notes and an audible real note grace note. So that theme note in the middle of the doubling should be audible. The grace notes, the G and the D, should be just articulative chirps. It should be like hitting a drum head, just a clap. Watch out for trying to make all three grace notes the same length. Some people will go, right, where you're hearing too much of that G pitch and D pitch. It's G, A, D, A. It's not what we're looking for. We're looking for A, right? And then the other thing to watch out for is kind of similar, but taking that a step further is making it, even if your G and your D are the right size, putting them too close together so that middle theme note is not audible, where you're going, right? You can barely hear anything in between that, even though my grace notes were nice and crisp. And you could also combine those two issues where you would go, right? G, D, A, and you never hear that middle theme note. I want to hear articulation to the theme note and articulation to the theme note. It should sound like two sounds. Cool. And work on that for each of your bottom 4 low doublings.
The next set of doublings we'll learn are the middle doublings. These are for D, E, and F. For these doublings, we still play a G grace note to the theme note, but since you can no longer play a D grace note on these notes, you just play whatever the lowest possible grace note is. So for a D doubling, you follow it with a E grace note. For an E doubling, you would follow it up with an F grace note, that's your middle finger. And for an F doubling, you follow it up with a second G grace note. Again, it'll be written as 3 grace notes, but that middle grace note is shorthand for a short real note.
Now for the middle doublings. The middle doublings are D, E, and F. These are a G grace note and then the lowest possible grace note. So for a D, I'll play a D and then a D doubling. using an E grace note there because it's the lowest possible grace note. From an E, I'm going to use an F doubling. We haven't done an F grace note before, but it's tap that middle finger. And then from F, the only grace note you can play is a G grace note. So it's 2 G grace notes. This one can be surprisingly tricky. It's easy to just think, tap my pointer finger twice, but at a certain point, you'll find that it's hard to keep those grace notes crisp. This is one that a lot of people quickly get into the what we talked about in the last section on the low grace notes, where your grace notes are wider than the theme notes. People go, right? Something like that, where I'm not hearing articulation to the theme note, articulation to the theme note. I'm hearing grace note, grace note, grace note, theme note. So same thing for all three of these. Don't go. Don't do that. Don't go. All right. I want to hear articulation, theme note, and then articulation of the theme note. And work on keeping those grace notes nice and crisp. And then again, the whole thing is not crunched either. Don't go. I want to hear that E in between the two grace notes. Cool.
The last doublings we're going to learn in this lesson are the high doublings. On high G and high A, you can't play a G grace note to start the note, so you just go straight to the note without a lead-in grace note. Then you can't play a grace note to separate it, so instead we play a shake to separate the first theme note from the second theme note. These will be written shorthand as 2 grace notes, but the first grace note is actually the shorthand for a short real note.
All right, we're on to the last set of doublings, the high doublings. The high doublings are kind of our combo breaker here. They don't start with the G grace note because it's your high G and high A. You can't play the G grace note. Go straight to the note, and then we do a shake to be our articulation to separate from the second sound. The sound, the overall rhythm should be the same from all 3 types of doublings, but the high ones are the ones that are really kind of executed differently. So for high G, we'll go, I can't play it from high G. I'll play both of these from F. I'll go, and to high A, I'll go from F, from the side, and you just slide your thumb over the hole there. All the way up the scale, each one should sound the same. So I can play the whole scale, starting with low G. You hear how the rhythm is bum 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 all the way up to da da dee dee on the high notes or the middle notes or the low notes. That rhythm should be consistent, and with these you don't run into quite as much of an issue with crushing or the other issues that you run into with the lower embellishment or the lower doublings, but just make sure that rhythm stays nice and consistent. Keep working, guys. Good job.
Here's a bit of sample music. This is a tune that we'll learn later on, but it had a couple good opportunities to practice your doublings. This is the second line of a tune called The High Road to Gairloch.
All right, let's try this sample tune out. So we've got an E that's got a dot on it, and then an F, and then an E doubling. Let's try that much out just to make sure we have a good E doubling. So that goes. Coming from the F, you've got a G grace note, which in this case is actually a full G, down to the E for your theme note in the doubling, and then your second grace note in the doubling. After the E, we've got a low A, and then a C doubling. So from the low A, you've got a G grace note up to your C theme note, D grace note back to the C theme note. From there, we've got a E grace note to low A, and if you notice, the G grace note and D grace note of the C doubling, followed by an E grace note down to the low A, is your G, D, E grace note pattern. You've got an E, you've got another low A that's dotted, a cut B, and then another C doubling. Let's try starting at the low A in the third bar. So from the B, it's a G grace note up to C, D grace note back to C, another E grace note down to low A, and then a B doubling. So from the low A to the B doubling, G grace note to B, D grace note back to B, and we finish with a shake to low A. Putting it all together. And right now I'm not too worried about the rhythm or the dots and cuts or anything like that. I just want to give you an opportunity to practice doublings in a real tune context and also keep focusing on good note transitions. This is another good opportunity to practice no crossing noises. Keep up the good work.
Thanks for joining me again this week. Some final thoughts for you. Work to master each type of doubling. Your low hand doublings on your low G, A, B, and C. Practice that pointer finger and then other pointer finger repetitive movement. Your middle doublings with your pointer finger and then your next grace note, whatever it happens to be, and also your top two doublings, the high G and the high A. Open up and then the shake. They should all have the same rhythm. They should all start on the beat. Learn to recognize what they look like when they're written in music. Look at bagpipe music that you might have available or in later lessons here and identify which ones are doublings. Check out Beginning the Bagpipe by Sandy Jones, pages 24 to 25, also 28, and also 30 to 31, or The College of Piping Tutor Part 1, pages 38 to 39, 41 to 43, and page 53.